It is nearly impossible to offer a simple explanation as to why so many souls boarded the HMS Christus on that fateful day. Not that there was any kind of capacity problem. Some had heard that the food was good. And as you know, cruises, well, there's a lot of it. And I'm sure that some were just looking for an extreme adventure on the open seas and a unique sailing ship experience. The extraordinary design of the Christus with huge masts and gopher wood construction definitely appealed to the romantic and the adventuresome. Some had simply followed the captain on board as though they were under the spell of a Pied Piper. He was popular on both land and sea. Some signed on as crew members because they had been listening to Dave Ramsey on the radio and they figured it would be a good second job to pay off their debts. There were lots of indebted people on board. I signed on because I wanted to see the world as it really was and to hopefully make a difference in the lives of some very needy people. If anyone was ever going to change things out there, it was going to be the captain of that ship. And I can remember the excitement as people boarded for that fateful cruise. There was a band playing. The people on dock were waving flags and they were chanting. There was a buzz in the air. It was electrifying. The crew filed on one by one, followed by the passengers who tended to move in clumps because they lacked sea experience and they needed each other in these clumps to help balance each other. With even the slightest motion of the docked ship, for even as everyone boarded, the waters were choppy, the winds were starting to blow, and the sky was darkening as the clouds moved in. "We better get underway without delay," the captain shouted to the first mate. The order to cast off and hoist the sail immediately followed, and we could all feel the ship lurch as it turned away from the dock and toward the opening of the bay. Because of the winds, within minutes we were all out on the open sea. Very few, including the captain, could contain themselves, for we all, by hunch or revelation, sensed that this would be a momentous voyage. Even though the seas were choppy, repainting the ocean backdrop from Pacific blue-green to angry white, it was pleasant enough sailing out there for the first 3 hours or so. But then suddenly, the captain gave the order to drop sail, and the ship screeched to a jostling halt. Passengers and crew just went, and then they all moved onto the deck to reconnoiter the situation. And it wasn't too hard to figure out the predicament. There, sitting no more than 100 yards off the bow, was the darkest, most evil ship you could imagine. And while very few had ever seen the ship before, everyone instinctively knew that they were on collision course with the pirate ship Golgotha. The white skull and crossbones were not just evident on the pennant, but they decorated the hull of the huge black mainsail. With the darkening skies and the choppy waters, it was an ominous moment, and not at all in a good way. Suddenly there were flashes of fire from the deck of the Golgotha. The captain of the HMS Christus sounded general quarters, and as the crew scrambled to their places, cannonballs dropped into the drink 15 feet from the hull of the Christus. The first mate, tired of waiting to hear from the captain, ordered the crew to return fire. But then he realized that the Christus had no maritime weaponry, for the captain had personally pushed the cannons off the good ship overboard as they left the bay in order to pick up speed. And the crew with panicked looks held their hands up in disbelief. No cannons? What kind of a crazy harebrained ship is this? What are we going to do? Just then, the captain ordered the passengers below deck and to prepare for a rough ride. He called for the sails to be hoisted again, and the ship lurched forward toward the Golgotha, just in time to catch a cannonball that crashed through the starboard side of the hull. The Golgotha tried to come about, but the Christus was picking up speed, and it was pretty clear that the captain of the Christus intended to ram the Golgotha. He strapped himself to the mast, and just as the bow was about to penetrate the side of the pirate ship, a mighty wave caused by the stormy seas tossed the Christus 45 feet into the air, so that when contact came, the keel of the Christus was slicing across the deck of the Golgotha. And the pirate ship was irreparably split in two, with both sides suddenly listing as the pirate crew scrambled for footing on the remains of their balsa ship. In some ways, the fact that there was cheap balsa wood under all that threatening iron actually worked in their favor. The pirate crew would be able to float for a long, long time. The Christus, though, suffered a terminal breach when the keel ripped into the Golgotha. A gaping 35-foot wide hole in the hull invited the salt water to rush in, and the good ship was filling quickly. Meanwhile, the panicked souls on the sinking HMS Christus could hear the taunting song of the defeated pirates who were suddenly standing on the debris of their ship as though they were at the helm of the world. Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. We pillage, we plunder, we rifle and loot. Drink up, ye hearties, yo ho. We kidnap and ravage and don't give a hoot. Drink up, ye hearties, yo ho. We're rascals and scoundrels, we're villains and knaves. Drink up, me hearties, yo ho. We're devils and black sheep, we're really bad eggs. Drink up, me hearties, yo ho. Yo ho, a pirate's life for me. There were no visible signs of remorse, and certainly not repentance on the part of the pirates. The Christus was going down after an encounter with an inferior balsa wood Golgotha, and I can tell you that there was a lot of screaming below deck, but the deeper we sank and the more water there was, the less we were aware of each other. After dropping for what seemed to be an eternity, there was a mighty thud as the ship hit bottom, and people toppled, then rolled toward the stern. Panic, the thought. There is no way anyone could ever swim for it. We're too far down, and the cold ocean water was rising and filling our rooms until the air was drained. It was glowing black. Gasp for air. One last gasp. Swallow. Stillness. Stiffness. Total darkness. How long we were down there, it's hard to say. 2 days? 3? But at one point, I suddenly became aware of being awake, being alive, breathing. There was once again air filling the rooms. Water was shooting out the portals and back into the sea as the HMS Christus was slowly, then quickly, floating toward the surface. And there were people. The ship was filled with lots and lots of people. Somehow we had picked up passengers while we sat down there. Thousands of new passengers from the bottom of the sea, from the depths. Souls who swam in through the hull breach. Yet in spite of the added weight of new souls, the HMS Christus was rising. The breach was now completely repaired, and the new Christus was stronger and more commanding than ever before. Even the glowing white paint was new, and somehow it had set even before we broke the surface with a mighty swoosh, not 50 yards from the floating pirate debris. Christus's crew and passengers, old and new, rushed to the deck. You should have seen the faces of those pirate survivors still clinging to the balsa debris of their dead ship, oblivious to the wake created by the surfacing of the Christus and the reality of the situation. The Golgotha would never again wreak havoc on the high seas, and the soggy pirates were reduced to a lot of hot air. Amazingly, they were still singing that earworm chanting, taunting pirate song, yo-ho, yo. Even though they were obviously waterlogged and it was sounding more and more gurgly. And even the most evil pirate musician would say that they were hopelessly off-key. In contrast, the new Christus was beautiful, more whole and brighter than even before the battle of the Golgotha. The captain was no longer strapped to the mast, but was standing on deck in his dress whites, surrounded by souls who had been lost, but who were now alive as never before. The captain pulled the ship about and offered to rescue the pirate survivors, but not a single pirate agreed to board the Christus. They'd rather take their chances clinging to the dead Golgotha and with the uncertainty of the high seas than to launch out in a new direction with a new captain on a new ship. Evil is stubborn that way. When the new HMS Christus sailed into the harbor, it was a stunning sight. A ship as never seen before. And as she came to dock, not a single person who had died with the Christus was willing to step off the ship, not even to stretch their legs on dry land. They didn't really need to, for now they had new legs that didn't require the stability of the land. There were some folks on shore who couldn't resist the draw of the HMS Christus, the ship that had broken the hull of the pirates. They boarded to take the tour, but stayed to join the celebration. They were received as though they had gone down with the Christus too, and were now alive again in the Christus as well. The newbie passengers and crew members were welcomed with a watering ceremony so that they might fully grasp the event into which they had become full participants. For they were now fully into the death and life of the HMS Christus, and in the future it would define everything about who they were, what they did, how they thought, the entirety of their very lives. A few minutes ago, Jack read for us the gospel account of the resurrection according to John, the 20th chapter. And then in Colossians 3, the Apostle Paul, Colossians 3, which is what Alex read for us, the Apostle Paul is attempting to apply this all-defining reality of the resurrection to a situation in the church at Colossae, which would be modern-day Turkey. And the issue at hand was a group of interlopers, pirates, who were trying to steer the Colossian church in an absolutely new direction, trying to persuade people that it's not enough to simply be in Christ, that is, to die in Him and to rise in Him, to put trust in Him. According to these interlopers, you also needed to have memorized a critical cosmic map of the spiritual powers and learned some of the spiritual mysteries, exclusively of their offering, mind you, for low, low price, especially if you call before midnight tonight. You get the picture. There's always someone who who wants to make these things more complicated than they are, and it's usually to their benefit when they do so, either financially or in terms of power or prestige or control. So Paul is trying to bring things back to the basics. You went down with Christ and you were raised with Christ. That's it. Live it. If you flip back a chapter in Colossians to Colossians 2:20, Paul says, "You have died with Christ, and He has set you free from the spiritual powers of this world." And then starting in chapter 3, verse 1, we read, "Since you have been raised to a new life with Christ, set your sights on the reality of heaven. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth. For you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God." And when Christ, who is your life, is revealed to the whole world, you will share in all of its glory, or His glory. That is, you have died with Christ, you've been raised with Christ, therefore let the things which have their hidden origins in the heavenly realities, being the headquarters of Christ's operation, let those things define your life. You're not going to get any higher than that. There is no higher government authority than Christ. There are no spirits wandering around out there who are higher than Christ. There is no cultural tradition which is higher, more authoritative, more important than Christ. Christ is the only person to whom you cannot say, "I want to speak to your supervisor." For He is His own supervisor and creator and superior over all creation, functioning together with the Father and the Son, His co-equals in the Trinity. There is a mystical but practical dimension to Easter. Christ went down by faith, you went down with Him. When Christ surfaced, by faith you surfaced with Him, and so you continue to live your new life in His resurrection. Absolutely nothing else is needed. Therefore, dump your old Golgotha ways, put them back in the sea. No need to sing the pirate song anymore or anything similar or close to it. Sing instead a new heaven-based song. In verses 5 through 9, Paul lists a bunch of things that are a part of the old pirate song. So put to death the sinful, earthly things lurking within you. Have nothing to do with sexual immorality, impurity, lust, and evil desire. Don't be greedy, for a greedy person is an idolater, worshiping the things of this world. Because of these sins, the anger of God is coming. You used to do these things in your life when your life was still part of this world, but now is the time to get rid of anger and rage and malice behavior, slander and dirty language. Don't lie to each other, for you have stripped off your pirate get-up, the old sinful nature and all of its wicked deeds. That is, quit trying to pretend that you didn't die and rise with Christ. Kill off any annoying remnants of that earworm pirate song, yo-ho, yo-ho. Replace it with a new song and a new nature. So verses 10 through 11 here in Colossians 3, and this is the authorized Boydston paraphrase. So clothe yourselves with your made in the resurrection new nature brand attire. And I'm not just talking about what you wear on the outside. This is also about internal renewal, internalizing the resurrection life so that it becomes the very fabric of your life. That's the only way you're going to have a restored relationship with the Creator. In this new life, the things which seem to matter most to the rest of the world are antiquated and irrelevant. It no longer matters if you are religious or not religious, single or married, high status or low status, what kind of documents you have or lack, if you are hip or square, conservative or liberal, couth or uncouth, the kind of job that you have or don't have doesn't matter either. Christ is all that matters, and He lives His resurrected life in and through all of us. He and His new life define who we are. And this is the good news of Easter, because we have gone down with Him and resurfaced with Him. Christ is all that matters, and He lives in all of us. That is, all who hop on board the ship. This is a key point this morning. All who hop on board with Christ are included in the new resurrection life He has established. All who hop on board with Christ are included in the new resurrection life He has established. It doesn't matter if you were a pirate or a refined aristocrat. It doesn't matter if you were a terrible sinner or someone who actually thinks he's a pretty decent fellow. The offer is absolutely identical. Whoever you are, look to the Christ who went down, broke the back of death, and surfaced better than before. Look to Him and live in Him. There is nothing more basic to this whole Easter business, to the whole Christian business than that. You know, it's easy to get or to lay all kinds of additional expectations on people. Add-ons, and people feel the pressure either from within or without, especially on the holidays. Some people freak out at the prospect of having to do the holiday right. The voice of some long-gone mother or aunt haunts you. You have to have this kind of a ham, and you have to have this kind of an egg hunt for the kids, and you have to wear these kinds of special clothes. You know it's not Easter unless you fill in the blank. Those kinds of traditions are not bad in and of themselves, but when the expectations become add-ons to what it's all about, they become distractions and at times barriers. And that's why the Easter sermon always seems to be about the basic, but not necessarily simple, the basic reality of the resurrection living. Living the new resurrected life with the Christ who went down but who's come up and has brought us with Him. So I want to invite you to something new. To try a new way of thinking, to try a new way of breathing, to a new set of attachments, to a new career, to a new resurrected life. Because once you've gone down with Christ and come up with Him, that changes everything.